Hi everyone, this is Brian Matiash, and I'd like to welcome you to episode number 3 of Perfect Inspiration. And today's image is a diner in New York City that I took a few years ago. It was on the west side of Manhattan, and it's one of those things where when I shoot these kinds of scenes, especially in densely populated areas like New York City, you really kind of have to have your wits about you, and you also have to make sure that you are able to tune out all of the distractions. A lot of times when I'm shooting, I really kind of want to get my shots and move on, because sometimes I'm shooting areas that either proprietors don't want me to shoot, or it's just kind of, you have a fleeting few minutes to get a good shot. Now, this is a diner, and I love the diner only because I love these angular lines, and I like the chrome that kind of surrounds the building. And overall, I just kind of like the overall shape of the scene here. And there were a lot of people there, and depending on how shy you are or not, it could be distracting, and that's the last thing you want, is to be distracted while you're shooting. So it's really important to find what it is about you as a photographer that can help you prevent distractions. Whether, as I wrote, you wear headphones or you just kind of embrace it. It's really important that you get in the zone and you get your shots. Now, this shot here, this is one of the original brackets that I took for tone mapping. You can see if I go to the image, here is one of the images exposing for the highlights, which is really important. And then as we scroll through the brackets, you can start to see that I'm getting mid-tone information and then shadow detail. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take all of these brackets and I'm going to send them over to Photomatix so that we can do a quick tone mapping. Alright, so here we are in Photomatix, and the reason why I'm doing this is because I want to be able to preserve highlight information, shadow information, and mid-tone information all in one image, which I can't really do with the limitations of the current camera sensors. In this case, that was the 5D Mark II by Canon. So what I did here was I set all of my sliders to default so that you can see where I start from. And I'm just going to go ahead really quickly and start playing around with various sliders here to get a nice even shot. What I always recommend doing, whether you use Photomatix or any other tone mapping product, is make sure you have your luminance histogram here, because it'll show you, you can see here if I bring the white point up really high, it starts to bunch up on the right here, the highlight portion of the histogram. And that means that we have loss of information. So by dragging that white point down, I'm able to restore the highlight information. And so what I'm doing is I'm just kind of toggling these sliders a bit to get a nice evenly exposed image so that we get just a kind of representative shot. And so a lot of times when I do tone mapping, I end up bringing the image back into Lightroom to be brighter than it normally would be. So you can see this is a bit brighter than you might want it to be, and the reason why I do that is because when I stylize, the stylization effects a lot of times can darken the image. So what I'm doing is I'm giving myself a little bit of a head start here by brightening it up a bit. So I'm going to hit Save and Re-import to return to Lightroom. Alright, so we're in Lightroom now, and you can see that this is one of the original brackets, kind of the mid-tone or mid-range bracket, and then this is what we were able to get by tone mapping. So just look at the difference here, like under the detail that we get under the awning, the detail that we get on the entire wall. We get much more detail here than we would with one of the original brackets, and this is really important. Now, you'll also notice that when I tone map, I'm not going for a style or a look. I'm just going to bring out the detail that's not there in this kind of an exposure. So by doing this, I'm able to get a representative shot close to what it looked like when I was standing there. Now it's time to stylize, and I'll do that by sending the image over to the Perfect Photo Suite by going to File, Plug in Extras, Perfect Photo Suite. From here, I'm going to send the image straight to Perfect Effects because that's where I want to do most of my stylization. Now, the way that I apply effects in general is I apply the effects that will kind of fit onto the image the most. So in this case, I'm going to go to the Movie Looks category, and as my kind of baseline effect, I'm going to select Blue Dawn. Now when I select it, it comes in at 100%, and I'm going to drop it down to 0, as I do with almost all of my effects, and then start bringing it upward to about maybe 40-ish%. I like what it's doing to the sky, and I like what it's doing to the overall image here. Next, I'm going to hit Add, and I'm going to jump right into Fashion Passion, which kind of gives me a nice kind of color saturation boost, leaning towards the blues. I'm going to bring it down to 0, and again, kind of start bringing it up slowly. So we can see right off the bat here what we're getting at. It's looking pretty cool. All right, let's keep going. Now I'm going to add tonal contrast. This is important to bring out texture to the scene because both Blue Dawn and Fashion Passion actually have a little bit of a blur to it, so you can see it softens the image. Go to Color and Tone, scroll all the way to the right to Tonal Contrast, and again, it applies to the whole image. Now, here's something that I don't know whether a lot of you guys know, but when you apply the tonal contrast, sometimes, other than the actual strength of that effect, what you can also do is drop the local contrast slider, which is what's giving it the texture. So I'm going to drop that down to about 30%, which will be my kind of 100% strength, and now I'll bring it to 0, and I can bring it up and kind of give it a nice little subtle pop. What I don't want is to bring any texture into the sky, so I'm just going to select my masking brush. I'm going to bring the inspector up and make sure that I am showing an overlay mask so I can see where I'm masking. So I'm just going to mask out this entire sky here. I don't want to bring texture because the texture can appear as noise, and I don't want that. So here we go, we get that. I'm going to turn the mask off, and you can see now what we're getting at. Continuing on, I'm going to keep stacking my effects. The next thing that I want to do is give this a really nice glow. And I can do that by going to the glow category, and something like Hollywood glow, if I hover over it, I like what I'm seeing. So I'm going to select it here. Now, you could, bring the strength down to 0 for a glow and bring it up a little bit. But what I love to do when I apply a glow is I actually love using the blending options. So I can go here and scroll through blending options and get to something like maybe hard light and bring the strength to 0. And just bring a little bit of it, because you see what it's doing is it's bringing up beautiful contrast in the shadows, especially up here. I mean, I'm absolutely loving what this glow is doing to the lights up here. It's giving it a very kind of Hollywood feel, as it were. So I'm going to hit apply and then continue onward. The next thing that I'm going to do is the foreground got really dark. You remember how I mentioned when you stylize, you tend to darken the image. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the color and tone and apply the lighter effect. Now, it applies to the whole image, which I don't want. I'm going to start by taking my masking bug, clicking in the image, and I'm going to position it over the foreground. Now, that might sound counterintuitive at first because it's actually darkening the foreground. So what I can do is bring the inspector up and click on invert. And that effectively flips the mask. So now only the foreground is lighter. I can bring the effect to 0, or I can use the antenna as you saw. I'll just bring it up just to brighten it up a bit. Now the last thing I'm going to do is I want to add a little bit of a blue shade to the windows here. And so I'm going to go to the photo filters category and just apply the blue effect. Now again, it applies to the whole image, and this actually is looking pretty cool. You can see if I bring it back here, it does add a nice kind of funky blue to the whole image, but I really just want it to the windows. So I'm going to take my masking brush and invert it so that it essentially hides the effect and puts my brush into painted mode, which allows me to paint in blue right through here. And I'm just going to really quickly do that. And so now if I bring my mask up, I can see, oh, I need to get just a few of these details, just so I have a nice kind of clean and even mask. And if we hide the effects bar and then toggle our preview, you can see what we started with. Good even exposure, a bit of color contamination, and then we were able to really give it a striking look with perfect effects. There's our image, and I'm going to finish this up in the develop module by doing a few things. I'm using Adobe Lightroom 4.1 release candidate, so you can actually download that from Adobe Labs. I think it's labs.adobe.com. And I'm going to bring up the contrast here, bring up the clarity, and then I might boost the highlights just a bit to give it a bit of a sensational look. Drop the shadows to make those a little bit moodier, especially up here. I'm really loving the little light cast that we're getting. I might also bring up the vibrance a bit and then give myself a nice little vignette to draw the eye to the center of the frame. And so if you hit the backslash key, which is typically above the enter or return key, you can see the changes with the Lightroom effects from the develop module. Now I saved a preset from Perfect Effects, and you can download that using the link below this video. So I hope you enjoy it, and be sure to come back next week. Thanks a lot.